Good afternoon and welcome. This is a special telecast on the centre versus the Twitter controversy. Now remember, Twitter received another setback on the 8th of July as Delhi High Court refused to grant interim protection to the microblogging site. The court pulled up the tech giant over hiring only interim officers in compliance with the new information technology laws, asked to file affidavits of these officers in court over the next 2 days. The court also allowed Centre to take action against Twitter wherever necessary. Now the new IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav has read the riot act. Take a look.
Multiple FIRs in the Ghaziabad assault case. Back-to-back summons to top officials. Under fire for wrongly depicting India's map. At loggerheads with the government over the new IT rules. There is no end to Twitter's woes. And on Tuesday, it received a fresh blow from the court. The Delhi High Court pulled up the microblogging site while hearing a plea on Twitter's non-compliance of the new IT rules. The High Court questioned the delay in appointment of grievance officer and refused to grant any protection to Twitter. It also said that Centre was free to take any action against the social media platform for defying the law. HC granted a day's time to Twitter, asking it to be ready with answers on its compliance.
The Delhi High Court wrapped Twitter, calling upon them to give answers as to how long it's going to take them to comply with all of the provisions mentioned under the new IT rules. A single judge bench of Justice Rekha Pali stated that Twitter cannot be given an indefinite time to comply with the laws of the land and that the central government was free to take any and every action against Twitter as per the laws, considering that no protection had been granted to Twitter.
The strongly worded observations came after Twitter admitted to not complying with new IT norms, which makes appointment of a grievance officer mandatory. The centre, which earlier disclosed an end to Twitter's immunity over breach of law, said that the tech giant is willfully ignoring legal requirements.
जो ट्विटर है वो अपने आप को भारतीय संविधान और कानून और सरकार से सर्वोपरि ना समझे। एक प्राइवेट कंपनी है जो यहाँ पे प्रॉफिट बनाने आई है और उसकी जिम्मेदारी बनती है, जैसे वो किसी अन्य देश में जाके बिजनेस करेगी, उनकी जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि देश का कानून तो मानना पड़ेगा। आइए यहाँ बिजनेस कीजिए, लेकिन देश के कानून के हिसाब से कीजिए। जैसे आपको अमेरिका का मानना पड़ेगा जहाँ की आप कंपनी है, वैसे ही आपको इस देश का मानना पड़ेगा।
The Delhi High Court observation came after a plea by advocate Amit Acharya, who has accused Twitter of defying Indian law. Will Twitter, which briefly locked former IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad's handle amid face-off with the government, finally blink?
So what are the fresh guidelines for social media? Let's take a look. Now, the tech firms need to appoint 3 types of officials. There needs to be a chief compliance officer who will then ensure that there are rules that are followed as well. A nodal officer needs to be appointed to be in touch with the law enforcement agencies and 24/7 if possible. Also, apart from that, the same nodal officer can also remove or block illegal or inflammatory content. Basically, a coordination between the agencies and the nodal officer will address the grievances within at least 1 day. These are some of the guidelines then to appoint a resident grievance officer who can respond to complaint in at least 15 days by the agency. Now, these companies are to identify first the originator of a specific post by a subscriber, or if there's a controversy that's erupting, or perhaps a disputed message that is unverified as well. 3-officer panel liable if illegal content is shared on their platform. So now Twitter cannot say that it was simply a subscriber putting a message. The responsibility and the accountability will be on the officer of the microblogging site as well. And these non-compliance with rules would result in possibly these social media companies losing their intermediary status as well. That provides them exemptions for now from specified immunity and from liabilities as a third-party information and data hosted by them. So in other words, basically, if the tech giants do not comply, they are now liable for action by the union government. So where did this controversy really come from? Twitter got in the trouble land basically of pretty much since the beginning of 2021. It started for the battle of freedom of speech. Then expressions soon boiled down to defiance of the law of the land. Here's now a look back at what exactly happened from January between Twitter and the union government. The timeline, the chronology coming up now.
The farmers of India were protesting, and on 26th of January 2021, the peaceful agitation turned violent. The government of India asked social media giant Twitter to remove tweets that the government said had used an incendiary hashtag. The government also asked Twitter to block accounts allegedly used by Sikh separatist groups and backed by Pakistan. Some 250 accounts were blocked by Twitter in response to a legal notice by the government, citing objections based on public order. But within hours, Twitter restored these accounts, citing insufficient justification for continuing the suspension. Twitter was sent another notice by the government of India asking them to block the accounts. Twitter responded by clarifying that they had blocked 500 accounts that they suspected of manipulation of platform and spam activities. But they refused to block accounts of media outlets, journalists, activists and politicians, as they said it would be an infringement on the freedom of speech. The Law Ministry in Parliament promised to take action against the tech giant. In a meeting between the government and Twitter, held within weeks of the incident, the Indian government told the tech giant that it was welcome to do business in India, but it had to follow the law of the land, irrespective of Twitter's own rules and guidelines. Tension between Twitter and the government kept mounting then onwards. Meanwhile, all social media platforms were notified to comply with the requirements of the newly promulgated IT law. The platforms were warned that non-compliance with rules would result in these social media companies losing their intermediary status. It is this status that provides exemptions and specified immunity from liabilities for any third-party information and data hosted by them. In other words, if the tech giants did not comply, they would be liable for punitive action. While Facebook and Google replied saying that they were working on complying with the new IT rules, Twitter refrained from commenting. WhatsApp challenged the new IT rules in Delhi High Court. In May, Delhi police started investigating a case of an alleged toolkit created by the Congress to defame Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Twitter tagged ruling Bharatiya Janata Party's national spokesperson Sambit Patra's tweet on the alleged toolkit as manipulated media. The investigating special cell of Delhi police sent a notice to Twitter. The social media giant was asked to explain how it described an alleged Congress toolkit tweet against the central government as manipulated media. The police reportedly questioned Twitter India MD Manish Maheshwari and visited the Twitter India offices in Delhi and Gurgaon. In early June, Twitter faced backlash by government officials after it briefly removed the blue tick verification badge from the personal account of Vice President Venkaiah Naidu and of several senior Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh RSS functionaries, including its chief Mohan Bhagwat. A political war of words had broken out.
What happens when you start finding the end-to-end encryption and tracing the first originator and direction to stop? What happens to privacy? It is blown up by a bomb called the Modi government bomb. This is complete censorship, complete thought control, complete terrorizing of the social media, complete control freak.
What we have unfortunately seen coming from the government of India is instead of seeking accountability, they are seeking control. Instead of ensuring that rights of citizens are maintained and free and fair news stories reach to them, we have seen that they're trying to control what is being read, what is being shared, and anyone who has a differing point of view will be held accountable.
It was only after this that Twitter became the only microblogging site to lose its legal immunity in India, making it liable for criminal cases for any unlawful post, as a publisher and not a platform. So taking down a post considered illegal by the government would no longer suffice. Government sources say Twitter repeatedly defied directives to appoint key officials for grievance redressal of users. The biggest flashpoint came over appointing a compliance officer, apparently delayed repeatedly by Twitter. The then IT minister lashed out at Twitter, accusing it of deliberate defiance and posing as free speech champion to circumvent India's legal system, pointing out alleged arbitrary use of manipulated media tags.
On the 25th of February, 3 months' time was given to the significant social media intermediary, namely those who are having 50 lakhs and more of followers. This exhausted itself on 26th of May this year. Okay. Many have complied. We were in correspondence. We gave them the last goodwill gesture. Please do. Comply. Otherwise it will have consequences.
But the opposition called the entire tussle a misplaced priority of this government.
विशाल हृदय का ये विशाल किसी एक प्लेटफॉर्म से कमजोर हो जाए। मैं समझता हूं कि सरकार को अपनी प्राथमिकताएं तय करनी चाहिए इस बात।
But there are some industry experts who opined that Twitter needed to follow the law of the land, like it does in many other countries.
A lot of paid influencers and bots have blown the conversations out of context, and a lot of information has been really misleading. So I think the government is fair, and I think we must all encourage and feel that Twitter should go ahead and set up local presence the way government is asking.
While all this was happening, an incident shared on social media platforms brought matters to a head. A video went viral on social media showing a 72-year-old being assaulted by a group of men. His beard was cut off as he tried to evade blows. The victim in the attack, Abdul Samad Saifi, in a Facebook Live with a local Samajwadi Party politician, alleged that he was forced to chant Jai Shri Ram. The victim's claims were widely shared across social media platforms and some websites. Following this, the UP police filed an FIR in Ghaziabad against a few online news portals, journalists and Twitter. Within days of the Abdul Saifi incident, another controversy broke out over a map of India on the career section of Twitter website under the header Tweet Life. The map showed Jammu and Kashmir, including Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, as a separate country, and it merged Ladakh with Tibet. A first information report was registered against Twitter India Managing Director Manish Maheshwari and News Partnership Head Amrita Tripathi under Sections 505(2) of the Indian Penal Code and Section 74 of the Information Technology Act. This was based on a complaint filed by a Bajrang Dal leader. The BJP accused Twitter of repeated acts of cartographic aggression.
It's not happened for the first time. But Twitter will have to answer why is it incorrectly showing India's boundaries, as also not complying with the laws of this land.
Though Twitter is yet to officially react to the FIR, Amrita Tripathi, without mentioning the FIR, tweeted, On 27th of June, Twitter finally appointed California-based Jeremy Kessel as their grievance redressal officer, as required under the new IT rules 2021.
When the social media had first started, it was a powerful medium for people to raise their voice of dissent in the beginning. A decade ago, it was celebrated, embraced as a powerful medium for the masses of any country. But then soon it evolved into a threatening menace. A dark world of manipulation of information, fake news started to make its way. That gradually then started the debate of regulating the social media across the world. Take a look at the journey of social media.
At the end of 2010, Time magazine named Facebook's founder Mark Zuckerberg as its Person of the Year. Zuckerberg's brainchild, Facebook, had just connected 1 out of every dozen people on the planet through his platform. It was declared the Facebook age. And in a way, it was. – 2010 was ending on a note of hope for a whole region. Arab Spring swept the Arab nations. People came out on the streets and demanded change. And for the first time, internet-based technologies played a central role in shaping political debates. Just months later, the India Against Corruption movement saw a well-coordinated media plan mobilizing citizens into action. Facebook alone saw more than 150 pages dedicated to the movement and its leaders.
The path forward is to bring people together, not push people apart, to connect more.
Over the years, social media revitalized public debate, bringing people together when they agreed on something or disagreed with something. And while Facebook remains the most popular social media across the world with a whopping 2.7 billion active monthly users, there are others who rule large sections of the social media pie. The entire last decade saw video sharing platform YouTube grow into the second largest social network, followed by a host of pure messaging applications like WhatsApp and WeChat, both of which connect over 1 billion users each. Instagram, launched in 2010, also boasts of 1 billion active users. Other platforms like Vine, Snapchat, and much later TikTok focused on shorter videos. As India-China border disputes intensified in 2020, the Indian government banned TikTok and other Chinese apps. The US President, Donald Trump, too threatens to ban TikTok beginning September 15th.
Well, I told them that they have till September 15th to make a deal. After that, we close it up in this country. And I said that the United States has to be compensated, well compensated, because we are the ones that are making it possible. And so we should be compensated. So the Treasury has to be well compensated.
A lot in social life became social media first. Hashtags broke the silence on sexual harassment, gave a war cry against discrimination, scaled up demands for action over climate change, and saw millions express their disagreement over policy failures. Adding to the online mix was a bombardment of fake news, inflammatory content, and troll armies shouting down those who disagreed. Manipulation of public opinion, amplification of polarization took over platforms. Facebook and Twitter, two platforms that dealt mostly in text, now shared a barrage of texts, ideas, facts, and news. Some true, others not so much. Fake news and propaganda could easily be passed around at lightning speed without a check, and it was consumed in large volumes. While some asked for the platforms to be held liable for the inflammatory content shared by its users, Facebook's founder refused to verify information his platform circulates. Zuckerberg maintained it is not for private companies to censor politicians or the news.
Which is on track to also connect more than 1 billion people.
He maintained Facebook was not the publisher. Rather, it just allows its users to publish whatever they want. Gone were the days when social media was heralding democracy in Arab nations. By 2018, there was proof that it was undermining it.
It's a wrap now on this special show. For further news and updates, you can always log on to indiatoday.in. Download the application on your phones for the latest. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.